Hello, and welcome once again to the Raging Introvert. With the news of the Iran deal and Trump pulling out of it, there's been a flurry of articles. So we're going to look at this one by Mr. Peter Bergen, CNN National Security Analyst. Now, this is, of course, a opinion piece, so let's keep that in mind. And with any opinion piece, it's always good to start off with an idea of who's writing the opinion. Peter Bergen, CNN National Security Analyst, Vice President at New America, Professor, writing a book about the national security decision-making of the Trump administration, which is impressive since Trump hasn't been in office that long. He's already writing a book on the decision-making process there. That seems fairly kind of neutral. Let's see if we can find anything else. Let's look him up on Wikipedia. We'll go to the top just to show that it's actually, Peter Bergen, national security guy, CNN. Let's see who else he's written for. Journalism, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post. Yeah, those are the regular. The Atlantic and Rolling Stone. The Nation, most widely read weekly journal of progressive political and cultural news. Mother Jones, a progressive American magazine. So this is not necessarily a neutral down the middle kind of guy. This is a progressive journalist. I wish CNN had mentioned that, or maybe some of his writings, like The Nation and Mother Jones, up here, so readers had a better idea of where this guy was coming from. That aside, though, let's begin. In withdrawing the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal, President Donald Trump is taking a huge gamble. Yeah, that may be true. He is a bit of a gambler. He's certainly done some outrageous things with North Korea that are paying off, at least so far. And aside from his desire to repudiate everything done by his predecessor, President Barack Obama, it's really hard to see why he is making this decision. Now, I find that statement a little unusual or a little strange. It's not hard at all. In fact, if we go and look at this article in The Atlantic, something he's written for, where the 2016 candidates stand on the Iran nuclear deal. Well, here's a summary right here. 18 candidates opposed, that'd be all the Republicans, and 4 in favor, that'd be the Democrats. We can go through. Rand Paul, no, no. Do you support Iran deal? No. Do you support it? No. Yes. Lincoln Chafee, Democrat. Martin O'Malley, Democrat, says yes. Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton says yes. Even Jim Webb, a Democrat, says no. No from Jeb Bush, no from Walker. So everybody, all the Republicans and 1 Democrat say no. So yeah, I have no idea where on earth could this be coming from. It's hard to see why he's making that decision. Probably because this is a Beltway establishment elitist guy. He's shocked to see a politician actually following through on something he promised during a campaign. That's understandable. Let's stipulate first that the Iran deal is working surprisingly well. Fuck you, no. I mean, who would give? I mean, it's brazen. I appreciate his balls in trying to stipulate that up front. No, I won't stipulate that. But let's see why you come to that conclusion or trying to sell it. That's according to the congressional testimony of Trump's own Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, who testified in October. Wait, shit. When is this article? Maybe I'm... it's May. Okay. So, 7 months ago? Mattis testified that it was in American national security interests. I kind of wish... I would be impressed if Mattis, like this month, had testified, or maybe he resigned. He came out in protest. But no, 7 months ago he said something. That's not as effective as it could otherwise be. Who else? That the deal is working is also the considered view of some of the most hawkish Israelis. For instance, Ehud Barak, who is a former Israeli prime minister and former defense minister, as well as a former chief of staff of the Israeli army. Well, that sounds impressive. Let's look him up. Barak, let's see, Ehud Barak was due to run in 2012 for election, but decided not to. He chose to quit politics. He He planned to quit since Operation Pillar of Defense and the Gaza War, but postponed it until later that year. So Ehud Barak left office in 2012. And I would assume, since leaving office and retiring, he probably hasn't been getting regular, up-to-date briefings on the most current classified information. So, okay, we've got somebody who's been out of information for 5 to 6 years, CNN. That sounds good. Instead of the former Israeli prime minister, former defense minister, I wonder if we could find out what the current prime minister of Israel says. Oh, Netanyahu says, Iran nuclear deal is based on lies. Here's the proof. Iran did not come clean on its nuclear program. Speech comes on heels of strike against 2 bases in Syria and ahead of Trump's decision on nuclear deal. So it sounds like the current prime minister, who you would assume has more current information, especially again of the classified nature, believes Iran lied, if it's hard to tell from this picture here. Interesting that this CNN article doesn't seem to mention that at all. As recently as Monday, Ehud Barak told the Daily Beast, there's another nonpartisan source, Iranians have kept the letter of the agreement quite systematically. I wonder if that's based off 2012 information when he was in office. We also have the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. They've been very successful with places like Iraq and North Korea, so we should certainly put a lot of trust in them. Good. So why blow up the Iran nuclear deal, given that this array of impressive, independent observers say it's still working? I don't know if I'd use the phrase impressive, independent observers. Again, I might say something like outdated observations say it's working. Trump, it seems, has become a prisoner of his own hyperbolic rhetoric, constantly repeating his mantra that the Iran deal is, quote, the worst deal ever negotiated, end quote. Again, it's not necessarily he's become a prisoner of his own hyperbolic rhetoric. It's he and every other Republican candidate for president in 2016 and one Democratic candidate all said the deal was bad, and he's following through on his promise to overturn it. Of course, this is nonsense. Oh, okay, good. So he's agreeing that this statement earlier about him being a prisoner of his own hyperbolic rhetoric is nonsense. For the Obama administration, it was simply the best deal on offer. Oh, okay, I see. That's unfortunate. I was hoping he would redeem himself here. Could the Obama team have pushed harder? Blah, 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 blah. This is all saying Barack Obama did his best. It was a great deal. It's working, and we shouldn't let the perfect get in the way of diplomacy and getting the best deal we can at the time. And yes, Britain, France, and Germany, all signatories to the deal, begged Trump to remain in the deal. These allies were even willing to negotiate amendments to the deal about issues such as Iran's ballistic missile program under the rubric fix it, don't nix it. But even that wasn't sufficient for Trump. Why? Well, these 3 nations aren't really under threat of nuclear attack. They don't really care if Iran has nukes or not. What they really want is access to the Iranian economy, because their economies in Europe are slowing down, and they want to start trade with Iran so that they can start making money to pay for all these new immigrants that are coming in and to keep their social programs afloat. The U.S., however, has investments in the Middle East. We are interested in maintaining a balance of power there. We have been threatened by Iran, those who say death to America, and we actually care about Israel, protecting that nation, and believe Iran could potentially try to go to war and or nuke them. So, that's why the U.S. has more of an investment in the nuclear part, whereas Britain, France, and Germany are not so interested in that and really will do anything and sign any paper and don't give a crap if it's followed or not, as long as they have access to the markets in Iran. Historians will likely be debating this question for years. Again, it shouldn't be a debate at all. Almost the entire Republican Party said the deal was bad from the start, and they're following through. After all, the Iran deal is quite popular with Americans, a healthy majority of whom, 63%, want to stay in the deal, while only 29% want to leave it, according to a new CNN poll. You know, it's amazing. You see all these polls coming out showing that all the positions Trump supports, he's always on the wrong side of the American people. The poll says 63% want to stay in the deal. What's done here? The numbers are quite similar to those who opposed President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. 59% opposed that decision, while 28% supported it. Oh, and similarly, Obamacare is now favored by a majority of Americans, according to a March poll by Kaiser. You know, he's on the wrong side of every issue as far as the American public's concerned, and he made it very clear during the campaign where he stood on those issues. And yet when it came to the only poll that really matters, the one where people go and vote for him, he won the election and became president. I don't know if these are maybe using the same pollsters that said Hillary Clinton had a 95% chance to win, or maybe the American people support positions against, that are different from Trump's, but they don't really care about these issues as much as, say, immigration. Whatever the case is, CNN can keep quoting its polls and saying Trump's on the wrong side of the American people, and the American people can keep voting Trump into office, and then, as far as I'm concerned, everybody will win. Trump is intent, it seems, on undoing the key international and domestic accomplishments of the Obama administration. Yes, he was pretty clear about that. And again, the American people elected him. The question is, does he have a plan B that makes any sense? Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess. People didn't think his plan, the experts didn't think his plan with North Korea, his increasing belligerent response to their threats, made any sense. And it's actually made more progress than, well, I would say any prior president since the Korean War. Trump said he would repeal and replace Obamacare, but when it came down to it, he and the Republican Party didn't have a real viable plan to do so. Now, let's not throw Trump under the bus completely on this one. Trump said he would sign whatever bill the Senate sent him. And this is something that the Senate had repeatedly passed bills to completely end Obamacare. No replace, just repeal. And President Obama at the time, of course, vetoed it. Let's take a look. December 3rd, 2015, Senator John McCain votes to repeal Obamacare, along with the Senate. And of course it was, like I said, vetoed by President Obama. July 28, 2017, Senator John McCain votes no on the, quote, skinny repeal. That's the problem. The problem is Republicans who promise to vote and push policies that the Republican voters want, and then when it really comes down to it, there's a large majority of establishment Republicans that don't actually want to pursue those policies. And when they're forced to pick, instead of lying to the voters and sneaking away with it, they will send a sacrificial lamb, like Senator John McCain, who was dying of a brain tumor, to vote no, to jump on the grenade for the establishment, screw the Republican voter base, and maintain the establishment priorities. That also is why we ended up with Trump winning the Republican primaries, because the Republican voters were tired of it. They've been screwed many times before, such as with, again, John McCain and his build the dang fence along the border in 2010. And then McCain, somewhere in this article, I found it. John McCain voting against an amendment to an immigration bill to build a border wall. So I think I had another one too, actually. Maybe I got rid of it. Oh, yes. Yes. John Kasich, who during the primary, as we saw here, wherever his face was on the stupid thing, was saying that the deal was bad. Again, when it came down to it, and President Trump actually stepped out of the Iran deal, then John Kasich says that President Trump's withdrawal from the Iran deal was a mistake, even though he was against it originally. That's why you got Trump. That's why the Republican voters are very angry at the Republican establishment. That's why a lot of people who didn't know John Kasich very well and thought, hey, I've heard he's governor of Ohio. When he first came to prominence in the primaries, people were interested in him. And then he turned into a bitter, grumpy old man who backstabbed the Republican voters and, acted like a child. He's thinking of running again in 2020, and he may as well save himself the time and effort because he's going nowhere. But anyway, I digress. Ultimately, this is less of a problem with Trump and more of a problem with Congress and the Republican establishment failing to get him the bill. Because he would have signed, honestly, complete repeal, replace and repeal, the skinny repeal. He would have signed anything they got to him. The Republicans just failed to get it to him. The Iranians have repeatedly said they won't renegotiate the deal, which means they could restart their nuclear enrichment program. Well, part of the concern from those who were against the deal to begin with is that the Iranians aren't following the deal, so it's not as big an issue. They're already pursuing research, enrichment, anything to further their goal in getting a nuclear weapon. And of course, they're going to say they're not going to renegotiate the deal. That's what anyone in their position would say, trying to prevent the deal from being broken. And the question is, can Trump restart it? That, of course, will lead to renewed tensions with the United States, Israel, and the Gulf states, as a nuclear deal was designed to tamp down. Well, there's already been renewed tensions with Iran helping the Syrian government kill people. And Israel and Iran surrogates in Syria have already had some kerfuffles as well. So the area is already having increased tension. That path takes us back to the real and renewed possibility of a war in the region. Possibly. I don't think that's what Iran wants, because it would not win. They gain nothing from that. And no nation gains from trying to go to a military conflict with the United States at this point. We can all hope that Trump's big bet that he will force the Iranians back to the negotiating table will pay off. But history suggests that these kinds of bets are easy to make on the campaign trail, but are much harder to pull off when you're sitting in the Oval Office. Well, history has suggested a lot of things that Trump has made campaign promises on, and again, has pursued. I would draw your attention one last time to North Korea. It's, the biggest example at this point. History would suggest that nothing can accomplish, and it'll be a stalemate. Well, it's been a stalemate, really, since the end of the Korean War. So 60-some years. So you would think it would be a stalemate for the next 60-some years. Trump has already made, in his slightly over a year in office, some significant advancements there, using very unorthodox tactics. So his track record's better than everybody else that history would suggest. Now, I'm not saying that this will be successful or not, but Iran has some major problems right now, and they are not in a position to challenge the U.S., and Trump has the leverage and has the power. So we'll see, but I do not believe that Trump is necessarily a prisoner of his own hyperbole. He's simply executing the plan he told the American people from the start he would execute were he elected, and they chose to elect him president. That's it for me. Thanks for listening, and leave your comments below. I'm curious to see what everyone thinks.